Welcome to Niners Talk with John, Tim, and Bryan. Let's talk Niners.
And Middle Kittle's wide open and down to the 45.
Sure, official, let me ask you something. Hey, Coach, go ahead. How can 6 of you miss a play like that, huh?
What the fuck was that?
John, you have the best size, I think, on the planet in all the podcast universe.
You know, this is supposed to be Therapy Tuesday, but it's more of a pissed off Monday, a manic Monday, made famous by the Bengals, since we lost to the Bengals. I'm just not happy.
I understand. I mean, if we lost to the Bengals, well, at least I had Susanna Hoffs to look at the entire game. This was anything but pretty to look at.
Yeah, so how are you feeling, Tim?
I feel that Halloween came early. I think watching The Exorcist might have been an easier video to watch than the 49ers. There's no getting around it. The 49ers were soundly beaten yesterday by a better team. They were outcoached. They were outplayed. This team right now, they've now lost 3 in a row, and they have now slipped into second place in the NFC West because of Seattle's victory over Cleveland. And they're now 2 full games back of the Eagles, going into a bye week that I think they sorely need. But the schedule doesn't get any easier after that. So the 49ers, there's a lot to talk about. What is going on with the offense? What is wrong with the defense? There's a whole lot we're going to talk about in this podcast.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Bryan, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling just as disappointed. I feel like it's a broken record. I know that, everything we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks is kind of just repeating itself over and over again. So we talked about that with Cleveland 2 weeks ago. We talked about it with Minnesota last week. And it's just kind of repeating itself. And we did talk last Tuesday, which was the 24th. Today happens to be the 30th. So it's 6 days earlier. So I feel like we had the Monday night game last week. We talked on Tuesday. We thought everything would be fixed. And then it's Sunday. And now it's Monday. We're doing this podcast. So it feels like everything's just coming together. It's just close. Yeah, I don't know. Today was kind of disappointing. But at least I got to watch the Warriors game last night. So where they won.
We got that going for you. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, or to some of our listeners who keep coming back, thank you. We're 3 obsessed Niners fans who get together weekly to talk about the 49ers. We do this whether they win. We do this whether they lose. And sometimes even when they tie. But we don't do it for the money. We just do it for fun. And if you have a moment, give us a like, follow us, give us a review. We're doing it if it's listening to ourselves talk. So on that note,
There you go.
I can sell it. Let's talk about this debacle of a game. First of all, congrats to Bryan Volpenheim. I hope he was able to watch it and enjoy the game. And also next week we will have Michael Loyocano on our show. He has kindly invited me down to Jacksonville to that game, but he's going to give us his perspective on the Jags. But it's about the Bengals right now.
I was going to say, first of all, John, congrats. Your first official travel assignment for this podcast. So way to go on that. And yeah, congrats to Volp. I hope he's enjoying his Cincinnati Skyline chili thing, whatever the thing is, chili, pasta, cream cheese, and Fritos or something like that. But sounds about as sounds about like the 49er game plan. It was kind of a mess.
Yes.
So John, when you're in Jacksonville, we'd like to get some audio of you interviewing some crazy Jags fans or some some noise.
I'm going to go inconspicuous. I just really, really want to win, to be honest with you. But we can talk about that next week. Let's talk about this week. So the Bengals. That was no bueno from the beginning to end. I mean, there were some faint glimmers of hope, but there weren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
So Tim, just why don't you give us some of your thoughts on the game and what you saw after looking at the horror show that was the tape this morning.
Well, let me preface it by saying, looks like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking. So, this was finally at 4:00 today. I decided, okay, I'm going to look at it. We're going to look at the game tape. So, the 49ers, after the last two losses, I felt they needed to come out and they needed to establish their tempo right out of the gate. And that did not happen. You look at the first 3 plays of this game. 49ers, they give to McCaffrey. He gains 8. 2nd and 2, he gains 1. And then 3rd and 1, they give it to Juszczyk, and Jake Brendel, the center, is absolutely just shoved right into the backfield. So the 49ers go 3 and out on their opening drive, and that is not the start you wanted when you're a team that is struggling. So Bengals, they get the ball, and you figure, okay, if the 49ers are going to make a statement, they're going to make a statement on defense. They had a shot at a fumble, first play of the game for Joe Burrows, very similar to, what we had with Minnesota, when Jarvis Ward picked it off. 49ers had an opportunity. They didn't cash that one in because of the CMC fumble, but the 49ers, the ball was lying on the ground, but Bengals were able to recover. But it really was the 3rd and 10 where I thought, here we go again. 49ers, it's 3rd and 10. Bengals are on their 31. Burrows is back, and I think 2 or 3 guys have a shot. And I felt it was going to be a sack. And it just, John, it was deja vu all over again. Almost a similar play to what we saw with Kirk Cousins against Minnesota. Burrows is able to escape. He escaped from Nick Bosa. He throws over to the right. He hits Higgins for 10 yards and a first down. And then on top of all that, even if the Niners had sacked him, the Niners were flagged for defensive holding. So right there, that set the tone of the game very early. Bengals score, they go up 7-0, and there's that knot in the pit of your stomach, like, here we go again. So the Bengals, they just seem to be firing all cylinders. Kyle Shanahan today in his press conference said his team looked slow and they looked tired. And I agree. There just did not seem to be that that intensity that we've seen from the 49ers, the earlier part of this year. So it set the stage for the rest of the game. The 49ers were able to tie the game, get within striking distance, but I always felt that the 49ers were hanging by a thread. It was just going to take 1 or 2 plays from Cincinnati to blow the thing open, and eventually that's what happened. So 49ers have a lot to work on in this bye week, and we're going to see what they do to get. I mean, it's going to be 2 weeks, but at this point, it's like, I think they need to get back to fundamentals. They're not tackling well. There's a lot of questions on the defense. So there's a lot to go through here, guys.
Bryan.
First initial observations, just going with the defense. I think they only, how did they do? They gave up a touchdown, and then that goal line fumble. They made him punt one time, and then another touchdown, and another touchdown, and then another punt. So, basically, they had 4 touchdowns. The goal line fumble by, I can't remember who it was. It was a Chase who fumbled it, but yeah, the defense looked like they were just kind of looking at the way that all the plays developed. They always seemed to be like 1st and 10. It was always like 1st and 10, and they were getting 10 to 15 or 20 yards or something on each play. And that just always seemed to be the case. And then if they had them 3rd and long, which was rare, Cincinnati just knew how to pick it up. They had everything from Joe Burrow scrambling for one. They had Joe Burrow, making some dime passes. So I don't know. I mean, we can talk about the offense too, but I think the defense definitely, I thought they were going to work on those inside middle passes from, when watching the Vikings game, but I don't know. It just didn't seem to work this game.
No. Well, John, I mentioned this during the game, and I know you do want to say it, but the 49ers front 4, and we mentioned they're not getting to the quarterback. They're not creating pressure, but the linebackers, Dre and Fred Warner, are about 4 yards off the line of scrimmage. which is fine if you can create pressure from your front four, but that's not the thing. And that middle is just wide open.
And that was early in the game.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, okay, run the ball or throw these little slant hooks in. Joe Burrow and company did that all day. I thought defensively it was the worst performance they've had in a long time. They just looked like totally out of sorts and in the wrong spot at the wrong time. When you let somebody go 19 straight completions, you're not doing something right. Like, call timeout. Like, do something. So the defense was atrocious, and for a unit like that with names like Hargrave, Bosa, Armstead, Warner, Gray Greenlaw, Travarius Ward, there's Hafunga. I mean, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a total letdown, not only from a schematic point of view, but also just an execution point of view. Yeah. That being said, we can switch gears to the offense, which again, I think was a schematic failure. I thought Kyle did not do a very good job of putting players in a position to win again. I think he's got this idea, we've seen this from him before, where he just wants to do something and he's going to do it until the cows come home. And right now it's establish the run. And so you can set your clock to it. What's the first play? Christian McCaffrey. What's the second play? Christian McCaffrey. It's like, they're like, oh, we're going to do the run to establish play action. Look, did you establish the run in the first 8 weeks? You can start with play action, play 1. Like, especially if you see, okay, here's an idea. Call a pass play, call a run play. Brock, are there 8 guys staring at you in the box? Great. Throw it off to this guy. I also thought the Bengals compared to the 49ers schematically put a lot more thought. I mean, you had Jamar Chase lined up in the slot against a nickel. I didn't see anything from the 49ers that suggested creativity. It just, I know he's got this reputation as this boy genius of calling plays, but he's done this before where it's like, I didn't see it. It looked plain vanilla to me. So, Bryan, any thoughts from you on just what you saw?
Well, the numbers speak for itself. I think it was like the first 3 games, the Niners averaged 30 points a game. Yeah. The last 3 games in these losses, they've only got 17 points. Yeah. And, in a tight defensive battle, that probably will win you the game. But it's not going to cut it if your defense is definitely not putting up the pressure and not covering the receivers. In terms of the run game, I totally agree with you. We had total opportunity, John, to take it to the 29th ranked defense for rushing. And, I always think back to this adage of running the ball will open up the pass, but passing will also open up the run. And you kind of need that balance. And I think you're right. The first 3 plays of all, 2 of McCaffrey and then the third one to Juszczyk, you definitely got to mix it up. And I think teams are understanding that, and they're going to bring players in the box, and they're definitely going to go for they know the Niners are going to go for the running game first now. And, that they're pretty one-dimensional in that field. So you're definitely going to have to break out of that. So Tim, what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I go back and I look at the game film. I mean, the Bengals had 3 down linemen and 2 ends in standing position, on their defensive line. And then their 2 linebackers are playing very close to the line of scrimmage. So when the 49ers snap the ball, McCaffrey not only does he not have the lanes, he doesn't have anything to cut back to. So he's frankly just running into a pile of bodies. Yeah. Because the 49ers, are not winning those matchups. And maybe Trent Williams in there makes a difference. I don't think it would be enormous. But he's just not finding the daylight that he's seen so soon. And I think the 49ers have become somewhat predictable in their first couple of plays. yeah, we can take McCaffrey and we'll give you one, we'll give you two. But on third down, we're gonna pin our ears back because we'll rush four and drop seven. And John, you mentioned we've talked about this in the last 2 weeks of Shanahan riding with someone to frankly levels that just don't make a lot of sense. It's like almost playing a video game. You keep running the same guy over and over again. In fact, I go back to the Pittsburgh game where the game was well in hand, and he kept running Christian McCaffrey. We're like, put in Jordan Mason. You've got other guys out there.
Yeah.
And so, later on, we did see some play action. We did see Purdy rolling out. I think he's better on a rollout. The Bengals looked a little off balance there, and the Niners were able to get some yardage there. But yeah, for creativity, I came away fairly disappointed. And you just thought, Kyle, your stubbornness is not going to win you the football game. It's out coaching the guy on the other sideline there. So we haven't seen that. We certainly didn't see that yesterday.
Oh, we haven't seen it since Dallas.
No, we have not.
That's right.
So, read a decent amount today. I think all of the quote unquote, I kind of almost think some of the members of the press are actual like 49er haters, who are, and even people who cover the 49ers don't like them, like Grant Cohn, and sometimes Matt Mayoko, and Kyle Conley just likes to feel superior. But a lot of people were talking about Brock Purdy. And I actually think he had a pretty good game. He had 2 mistakes, could have been 3, but some of his ball placement while we were trying to catch up was elite. That throw to Kittle when he was backed up against his own end zone, throwing across his body to hit Kittle again near the Bengals end zone, hitting McCaffrey in the end zone. Really, for me, that was about the only high point I saw, is that he was able to keep the Niners in it with his arm and his legs. Bryan, what do you think of Brock? That was my only like shining hope out of this game was, okay, at least he's trying. He's keeping him somewhat in it.
He did have over 300 yards passing. So what was it, 365? I thought he looked pretty good up until the point when he was trying to throw that little loft pass to Elijah Mitchell to score that touchdown. And I can't remember who picked it off on Cincinnati, but that was just an awesome play. Like,
Was it?
I
Yeah,
can't
it was
believe
a
that guy,
D-lineman.
that was amazing. But I'm just kind of at a loss sometimes. That was a freak play to me.
Yeah.
That happened. But he looked, overall, I'm still on Brock's bandwagon. I'm definitely for him. I mean, like, you're gonna make mistakes, and it's unfortunate. It's kind of magnified because the Niners have lost 3 in a row, and they've only put up 17 points a game. But I think he did pretty good. You were right, John. He had some excellent throws to Kittle at the end when they were trying to do that mini comeback. Yeah, we'll just we'll see.
Tim?
I don't know. What about you, Tim?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you guys. I am going to be that guy, and I'll preface it by saying I'm not putting this all on Brock Purdy. Football, as we've said before, is a complementary game. All defense, offense, special teams, they all have to, if one side is lacking, the other has to pick it up and so forth. But I thought Brock, well, let's take a step back. He's thrown 4 interceptions in the last 2 games. Hard to win football games when you're turning the ball over. He got away with 2 passes that could have been picked off, 2 in the first half. One, which was a very similar to play to what happened in the fourth quarter when he was picked off by the Bengals linebacker. But I'm going to go to his first pick in the fourth quarter. And this is, I think, this is a growing pain for Brock Purdy, and he has to learn from this. We look at that play and what it was supposed to be an option handoff to Elijah. And if that wasn't going to happen, then I think he was going to try to shovel it to Kittle. Well, the handoff doesn't happen. He starts rolling to the right. It's first down, and it's now turned into a running play. So 2 things. One, if it's not there, run out of bounds, just kill the play, go to second down, get another opportunity. I think he was trying to make something happen, but I think he's got to have better game awareness. You're down 7, you need a touchdown. You can have 2 other opportunities after that. And he also should have done a running play that his linemen were downfield. So if he had completed something, it would have been called back. On the other interception, he was baited, and he was baited, would say very well by the Bengals linebacker. He had thought Purdy thought he was going to go to his right. He goes to his left, and baited Purdy right into that throw. So 2 interceptions at least in the last 2 games. Is it all on Purdy? No, of course not. We've talked so much about the defense, but he's going to have to learn from these mistakes. And as I said, in the play that was still Elijah Mitchell, his first interception, he's got to have better game awareness. So I think those are realistic criticisms. Nobody's perfect, but Brock has to be aware of the down distance in the game situation.
No, I don't disagree with you on those. I just think if you had had any other quarterback in there like Sam Darnold, it would have been 31-3.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that. If we had held on to Trey Lance, everything would have been fine. No, I'm not naive or ignorant enough to say that. I think in fairness to Brock, he is not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to throw for 400 yards. He's not that type of player. So to put it all on his shoulders, I think is it's a challenge to him. He's dealing with a lot more pressure than he has at any point in his career with the 49ers. And we're going to see how he handles it. I think we've obviously seen what he can do. Now the question is, okay, after this kind of, after 3 losses, will he be able to turn it around?
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's going to have to start with Kyle, though.
I agree.
I mean, we've seen this story before with Garoppolo.
Yeah.
So, it has to start with the coaching, and that's where we get better. But let's get into our review of the keys to victory, where the Niners actually went with a whole goose egg. Get the defense right, number 1. That was a big no. 31 points.
And 400 yards. And as I said to you earlier, John, in the last 2 games, the 49er defense has 852 yards.
And to be honest, that 31 points could have been easily more without that fumble down the goal line.
Yes.
All right. Bryan, are you glad you didn't go to that game? Going back to Levi's?
I am so glad I sold my ticket. So, I'm glad.
That didn't help.
Sure, obviously, we thought having home field advantage would be helpful, but why not? 2 games away and come back at home. No. But the crowd looked fired up, and I thought they would have all been fired up because it was reunion alumni weekend.
Yeah.
And so you kind of would have thought that they'd been all fired up. So
I actually think Joe Montana is really bad for the game. They seem to lose every time Joe Montana shows up.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
How should you put him in?
John, have you seen that? What is it? The Geico commercial where it's like Emmett Smith, Jerry Rice,
Yeah,
Randy
Pepsi.
Moss, and yeah.
It's good for at least one series.
It's like Tony Romo said, I could do 2 plays.
Yeah,
2 plays.
exactly. Yeah. Turnovers, keep them positive. That didn't happen.
That's a negative, Ghost
That's
Rider.
a negative on that one. And then last but not least, don't let Joe Burrow beat you. Well, when he can throw 19 completions, it doesn't happen either.
Yeah.
I do have to say, we go to the stars of the game. Joe Burrow is back to being Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow I wish he had been playing Seattle or he'd been playing some other team other than the 49ers because he looked awesome.
he looked pretty sharp.
Yeah. He looked sharp. His calf's obviously not bothering him anymore. He had a really good game plan against the 49ers defense, and he executed on it. He was fired up. The other thing we've seen, the Browns and the Bengals have been coming off buys. I think NFL teams are getting better about managing the bye and getting these guys rested. because the Browns looked energetic and the Bengals looked energetic and the Niners did not. The second stars of the game was Joe Mixon.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Mixon, really good running back performance. He was gashing them. I don't think the Niners have given up 100 yards rushing, and they did in this game. Tim, is that right?
I gotta look real quick here, but in terms, they gave up 134 yards rushing. They had given up 100 yards to Cleveland. They actually gave up 160 yards to Cleveland, 105 to Arizona. But I think in this case, it's been like Minnesota and Cincinnati. You don't have to dominate the 49ers in the running game. You just have to be effective, and that throws off their game plan.
Yeah. Well, as I like to say when we win, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. I'd like to actually see some sunshine and lollipops.
Yeah.
In a month.
Yeah. Bryan, where can we improve?
Well, a little bit of everything. I'm gonna lean on the defense first.
We only have 4 hours to kill, so
I mean, we've already talked about the defense, the offense, but I'm gonna say overall, the defense needs to improve, especially the pressure on the opposing quarterback. So, in 2 weeks when they're playing Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, you want to see Trevor Lawrence on the ground. And I think they only had 3 sacks, which they probably could have had more against the Bengals. I might have that stat right, but you want to see the pressure up front, and then that'll lead to kind of everything else. I always believe, with the middle of the field, with the corners, the safeties. As long as you put pressure on the quarterback's going to rush everything, and that's where I love to see them get better first. Tim, what do you think?
You have to get better on first and second down. These second and fours, these third and shorts are killing the 49ers.
Are we talking offense or defense?
Well,
both?
I'll get to the offense in a second, but I think, going back to the defense, Richard Sherman said on his podcast today that he looks at the Niners, they're playing a lot of man on first and second down, and that the defensive line seems to be trying to do some sort of intricate pass rush technique that he does not seem to be working. He's like, get back to the fundamentals, get back to simply playing football and getting after guys. I mean, if you make a mistake, then, make a mistake, but crash down on these guys. Don't let these guys push you around on the line of scrimmage. But I think, after hearing everything we've said so far on the defense, and I know we'll talk more about the offense, but from what I hear from you guys, this is not a talent issue. We look at this team. We look at Hargrave. We look at Armstead. We look at Bosa. We look at Warner. We look at people who are all pro, and it's not happening on the field. So I think the easiest scapegoat is Steve Wilkes right now, and there's been some talk about him now getting out of the booth and coming down to the sideline. If that might be a plus, perhaps it will. But the 49ers need to put teams on their heels. They need to play with that sort of reckless abandon that we've seen from before. And that has at times, given up some big plays. There's no question about that. But the 49ers, to me, the defensive line in particular, they look hesitant coming off the ball. There doesn't seem to be any sort of, I'll meet you at the quarterback attitude. So, I think, I think, frankly, just like I've said before, I think this team just needs to get back to straight fundamentals in the bye week.
Yeah, Bryan, any other places to improve?
Well, I'm going to dwell on that topic, Tim, you were talking about with Steve Wilkes. I did see that about, people saying he should come down from the booth. I mean, that doesn't seem like his character. He doesn't look like a Robert Saleh, the D'Amico Ryans type of guy to be down there and always fired up. I think he can do it from the booth, but I don't know. But if that's what it takes to fire up your guys, something needs to be lit. Like they're definitely playing passively, and you could just see that. And I think you called it. They're hesitant. I don't know if that's going to change in any way, or I'd love to see it kind of change, but I don't know. There needs to be some sort of motivation or fire with the defense.
I tend to think this is for both offense and defense, they're overthinking.
Because they know they're good.
Yeah, it's like, don't come up with this intricate whatevers and what. It's like, hey, you four, it's real simple. Go get that guy. And then Fred and Dre enforce the middle, and then you've got enough guys that can cover, because if they can crash down in under 2 seconds, no quarterback's going to be able to get off big plays. And Fred and Dre have always played really well when they're, up against the line. Then when you have a 3rd and long, then, you put everybody near the first down marker and tackle before they get there. It's not rocket science. But the same thing goes on offense. Like, don't get all this like, well, I have to do this chess match because I might be playing Seattle in 4 weeks. Like, no, right with the right now. It's a week to week league. Start something new each week. Don't, like, I love Christian McCaffrey. He is a warrior. He is awesome. He has scored 17 touchdowns in a row. Do something different. Make it easier on Brock. Make it easier on Christian. And I just don't see it. Like, and it's frustrating as all get out, because I am by no means a football expert when I'm like, okay, well, guess what? Christian McCaffrey's coming. Like, you don't think the defense does that? So,
One thing I wanted to point out, like, you can definitely see the frustration level on some of the players, because I did see Christian McCaffrey on TV kind of say to Brock, like, give me the effing ball. I don't know if you guys saw that, but yeah,
I did not see that. No.
if you say that, I think they were in a huddle, and I think they were it was probably around the 3rd or the 4th quarter. But I think when it was like, I think they were getting stopped, and I can't remember the context, but I did see, my friend was telling me that he was saying that to him, give me the effing ball. And,
I remember Garoppolo once getting in a play from Kyle, and he's like, same fucking play, and just shaking his head. So, yeah, he gets in these things. So, anyway, since we're at the half hour mark, let's talk about my other shit show that's going on, which is my betting results. I actually didn't know it was possible to go 0 for 4 weeks in a row. So,
wait, what?
Yeah. So this
my
is
God.
my last betting segment. We're killing it here. This is when it dies. Yeah. So 0-3, 13, 26-1. The Commanders actually had the Eagles on the ropes,
Yeah, they did.
plus 6.5, and let them off the ropes, and couldn't get that sorted. The Jets and Giants just played in a monsoon, and with Zach Wilson and the 3rd string Giants quarterback. So that was a punt fest. And Cleveland and Seattle. Fucking Seattle. I mean, end of the game, scores it, goes over. So that's it. That's the end of the John Cashman betting segment for Niners Talk. You'll have to go find your opposite bets and do well someplace else. So, Brian, that brings us to Niners trivia time. I don't know if it's a themed one, a mid-season theme, or have we gotten ourselves back on track theme?
I found this week kind of interesting. So,
good.
They're not, obviously it's not Jaguars themed yet. So, this week is bye week themes. So I didn't know you could actually have enough content to put for a bye week, but I'll tell you guys. Okay.
Well, there's the Google.
Let's see. I think Tim's going to know this one, but the NFL brought back the bye in what year?
1990.
John?
1991.
What a contrarian. All right. Tim says 90. John says 91. Okay. Question number 2. Since then, what is the earliest the Niners have had their bye week? And what is the latest the Niners have had their bye weeks? So this is a 2-part question.
So I'm going to go with 2019 would be their earliest when they had it in week 4. And the latest, I have no idea.
I'm gonna agree with John. It was 2019. The latest, I'm just gonna have to do a shot in the dark here. I'll say 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
You guys want to hint in any way or?
Nope.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I'll take a hint.
Sounds greedy.
Yeah. I like to cheat too.
I will say Mariucci in the Mariucci era.
All right.
Mhm.
Then I'll go 2003.
Okay.
Actually, no, 2002, because 2003, I think we had Dennis Erickson.
Okay. So we talked about, so you guys said 1990, 91 is when the NFL schedule. I will give you, yes, that did happen in those 2 years. So, but before that, the NFL actually did have bye weeks in 1950, 1960, and 1966. So the Niners joined the league in 1950. So I'm going to see here if you guys can guess this. The reason why they brought these teams in was because they brought in expansion teams. So it was even, let's say 12 teams or 14 teams, and they had to bring an extra team in for expansion. So let me see if we can guess this one. In 1950, which were the teams that came in that made the league uneven? In 1960, which team came in to make it uneven? And then in 1966, which team came in to make it uneven?
So we start at the first one. So in 1950, which of the teams that came in to made it uneven?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Los
well-
Angeles Superchargers. I have no idea.
It was, well, one was the Niners and the other was the Cleveland Browns. I don't know of the third one that have come in. Those are the only two ones I think.
The Dallas
Oh.
Texans.
That was the AFC, John. Come on. What was the second one? What was the second question? In
1960.
1960 to make it uneven. I'm going to say Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
And then
And
what was there a
66.
third? 66.
The Chefs.
No, because they were still in the NFL. So they didn't merge until the 69, 70 seasons, or 71 season. So I'll go with the Saints.
Those were good educated guesses. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That's
You
it.
know, I
Let's
did
move
go to
on.
Villanova.
Whoa.
All right. Let's
Cool.
move on. Thanks.
All right. So now we're at midseason. All right. How are we feeling about the Niners right now? It's been a little roller coaster, like we click.
Sort of like the Edge at Great America.
Yes.
Like, you want to do it again?
No.
No.
Not really.
So I have two thoughts.
Yeah.
One's positive and one's dark. The first thought is we've been here before with Kyle Shanahan. It's actually his second best record at week 8 since 2019. So he was undefeated, 8-0, and then now he's 5-3. You know, we've been much worse. So, and he's dug himself out plenty of times before, last season left, etc. So my positive thought is they'll recover from this. They'll be stronger. They'll go on a run. And number one seed's not totally out of reach because the Eagles still have a brutal schedule. Seattle still has a brutal schedule. And the Niners still can beat all those teams. Here's my pessimistic thought. This season reminds me a lot of Harbaugh's last season when they went 8-8 and just couldn't execute. You know, it started off strong. Obviously, they were in the NFC Championship the year before. They just couldn't get it going. I just remember, the brutalness of that Thanksgiving game against Seattle. Playing Seattle on Thanksgiving again. Those are my two thoughts. And right now I'm feeling a little more darker than I am optimistic. Tim?
Yeah, if we had to give the 49ers a grade at this point, I give them a C. Just because they race out to this 5-0 start, but the last three games we've seen breakdowns, and we saw the worst breakdown in the last one against the Bengals. I'm gonna share the pessimism with you, John, because I don't like how well Kyle's been here before, and players saying, "Well, we've been here before." Guys, you don't want to be here.
Yeah.
This is not where you want to be. And giving me the answer like, well, we've had to fight through this before. You shouldn't be in this position. Two of those three losses you could have won. And we'd be sitting here at 7-1 instead of 5-3, and a really bad feeling going into a bye week. So I agree, John, that this feels a lot like Harbaugh's last year, where they were able to eke out some wins down the line, but it just seemed like the Niners were playing below the level of what the talent on that team could do.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but I'm not going into the second half of the season considering the way they have played, the situation with the defense, Kyle's stubbornness with going to the same plays or same patterns, I would say, and looking at the level of competition, the Niners they got a tough challenge ahead about that. So, is it possible they won? Absolutely. But I'm not brimming with optimism and saying, "Yep, bring it on, let's go, come on." I'm more like, "All right, we got to get this right. You guys need to put yourself in an office for 4 days and figure this out."
Brian, do you have any sunshine or lollipops to give?
Ugh. Well, you brought me down, bringing back the 2014 season, because I just remember that they were like what 7-4, and
They
then
were
they
8-8,
lost to
yeah.
Seattle.
They
Yeah,
lost to the
they lost to
Raiders in
Seattle.
Oakland. That's where that was that was a horrible loss.
And then you went to this game, Tim, but we lost against the Chargers. I remember at home.
Oh, I
minute
remember.
field goal.
And they also blew a 28-10 halftime lead. But who's bitter about that
Yeah.
loss?
I'm going to try to stay a little bit more positive. I actually, well, I am disappointed because I did think that this was the win that they needed to get. Like everybody wanted to go into the bye with a victory to be 6-2. I'm just disappointed they didn't get it. I'm sure everyone in the organization is just as disappointed as fans. I think they'll figure it out. These next 2 weeks, as Tim, as you were saying, they'll probably reanalyze everything from the way they call plays on offense and on defense. Brock's going to have to be a little more protective of when he's going to throw those balls deep. And I think they'll figure it out. Their schedule is going to be a little bit like they're playing Jacksonville in 2 weeks, and then they're playing Tampa Bay. 3 weeks from now, they're playing Seattle, Philly, and then Seattle. So that's going to be a tough gauntlet. So weeks 12, 13, and 14. So, but as long as they get those 2 wins next week, in the next 2 games, they'll be 7-3, and then they can take 2 out of the 3 against those tough games. I think they'll be fine. So,
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like, the path is there. Their path to the number 1 seed is there. Path to the NFC West is there. My big concern, and again, this harkens back to 2014 under Harbaugh, was it was a comedy of errors. Every time you went and looked at something weird happened. Remember that Kaepernick fumbles the ball on the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was just stuff like that. So absolutely they can get right. But they got to show me that they can get right.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm a little mystified right now. And again, I'm glad we have a bye week, because next week we can enjoy football. Hopefully Seattle loses. Dallas and the Eagles are playing against each other, so someone's going to lose there. And then, we'll see. Hopefully we get Debo and Trent Williams back. I mean, the only big news coming out today was, Aaron Banks has turfed, which obviously could have affected the game. But I think Joe Feliciano did a really good job when Banks was out, so I'm not too concerned there. But to me, it comes down to execution. And we'll do one more thing before we wrap things up. The trade deadline.
Don't edit that, John. That was great.
I had so many bad thoughts through my head, but I'm not gonna say them. It's a family podcast. The trade deadline comes up. So excited, I can't say it. Trade deadline comes up tomorrow. Bryan, you think you're gonna make a move?
I mean, there's talk that they want to pick up some sort of corner or safety, and I think I talked about that. We might have talked about that like previously if we were going to go after some players. So it might as well. I mean, they're basically all in for the next 2 seasons, right? So anything they can to make it better. I still think, if we're talking about the corners, I think Gibson, Hufanga are awesome. And we haven't seen a lot of Womack lately, but Lenore seems to be playing pretty good most of the time. So who knows? I think they'll probably go after some sort of corner. I think that's what is my kind of thoughts. I don't know, Tim. What do you think? Do you think they'll pick up somebody, or
if they do, I'll be surprised. I just don't know if the Niners have that much to offer in terms of draft picks, or if they are going to want to give up some of the prices for the players that are still out there. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm not holding my breath.
Because you don't want to run out of oxygen. I mean, honestly, it's going to happen before the podcast will come. It's going to happen after we finish this up. I actually think the Niners will make a move. One, I think they need a spark of some sort, similar to when they signed Bosa. I think they need to feel like some kind of cavalry is coming in that's going to help them.
Well,
I think also that they also need to address a big problem, which is rushing the passer right now. So I think they're going to get an edge rusher. I can see 2 guys. One, Danielle Hunter from the Vikings. I was so sad to see Kirk Cousins go down.
Yeah.
Obviously he had an awesome game against us, but from the quarterback thing on Netflix, what a good dude. And I hope he recovers. He's able to play. And if he decides that that's a career, he was just a great person and a great Viking. And unfortunately he was with the Commanders, which is just a death knell. I think you could see Danielle Sweat. Not Danielle Hunter. You see Marquez Sweat. You could see Chase Young. You could see Byrne from Carolina. All of those teams not doing so hot right now, want to move into rebuilding, and can get something for them as all these guys become free agents. So that's kind of my thought.
I'll throw one other thought. I think the one guy maybe scratching his head a bit is Randy Gregory. I mean, when he joined the Niners, he's gone 0-3 with the Niners, while the Broncos have won 3 straight. So I'm just, I'm sort of thinking, he's like, wait a minute, what just happened? So, just wanted to put that out there for a little bit of free agent trivia. So grass sometimes isn't always greener on the other side. At least I hope it gets greener for the Niners.
And Randy Gregory, because right now,
yes,
we're like, hey, Randy, we're just going to cut you because for some reason it's just not happening.
It ain't working out. Out. We tried this dating thing for 3 weeks, and I'm just not feeling it. Anyway,
but Tim, as our resident historian,
yes,
I think we need some. We talked about the debacle of the last year of Harbaugh, but why don't you tell us the tale of the 1988 Niners and how they rose from the ashes? What season to beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl?
Okay, so we're going there. We have to go into history to make ourselves feel better. Okay.
Yes, Tim.
Well, once upon a time, the 49ers had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks on their roster and a Hall of Fame receiver. You can
This
probably
isn't making
guess
me-
how this ends. So,
You're not making me feel better.
so they also had a Hall of Fame coach. Well, they weren't playing very well, and then the Hall of Famers started doing their thing, and they beat the Bengals in Super Bowl 23. The end.
To you're a horrible storyteller.
Well, what a great
All I
ending.
will say is the 1988 49ers started on 4-1. They were then 5-3, and they went on a run, and they won the Super Bowl.
Yes. Yes, they did.
So, Brian, any tidbits from history that you'd like to share, or would you like to give us your trivia answers?
Let's go with trivia and wrap this wrap this up. Okay. Number one. What year did the NFL institute or bring back the bye week? Tim, you said 1990, right?
Yeah. I
And
said
then
90.
John, you said
1991.
it was 1990, the year we lost to the Giants in the NFC.
Let's not
games.
talk about
That was it.
I know. It just, we don't need to go to the worst, one of the worst loss. No, it still ranks as the worst loss of my 49er fan.
We're covering all the fun topics today.
Yeah.
I need a Quaalude to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, why don't we
Question
just throw in
number
Richard
2.
Sherman and Crabtree while we're at it? Let's just make ourselves feel even better.
Well, Richard Sherman did ruin Thanksgiving.
Yeah, he did.
Eating like that big turkey leg and
On the
that
49ers logo.
All right.
Next.
Okay. So since 1990, what has been the earliest week we've had a bye and what has been the latest week we've had a bye? So I gave you guys a hint. Mariucci. John, what did you say?
Well, I said 2019 week 4, but I had no answer for the latest one.
Correct. Tim?
I just threw a shot in the dark. I think I said 2002. And or
Okay.
excuse me, I said 2019 for the earliest. I said 2002 for the latest.
Okay. So in 96 and in 98, their bye weeks were in week 3. So really stinking early.
Wow.
In that process. So, and then in 2000, it was week 13. That was the latest. So that was, 2000. Okay. Last question. So I mentioned that the NFL brought the bye weeks in when the league became uneven in terms of the number of teams. So went from even to odd. It happened in 1950, 1960, and 1966. So Tim, who joined in 1950, you said which teams again?
Well, he said that there were 3 of them, and I know 2 of them. I know 2 were the Cleveland Browns and the 49ers. I couldn't remember who the third one was.
It was the Baltimore Colts.
Ooh.
Who went defunct and then got brought back like 2 or 3 years later. So I think they lasted 2 years and then they came back. All right,
They shot the
1960.
Sean.
Big Black Glue Factory.
Oh, boy.
1960, which team was it? Went from 12 to 13 teams.
I think I said Minnesota.
I thought you said the Saints. Or was that 66?
Oh, 68 or 60.
Oh, okay.
60 was the Cowboys.
Ooh.
They
I said the
came in.
Texans. That should
Yeah.
be a positive achievement.
Wrong league.
Close. 1966, last one. Went from 14 to 15 teams. Tim, you said what?
I said the Saints.
Okay, John,
I really had no answer.
NFC South team, it was the Atlanta Falcons who came in 66. So that was it.
Well, I
Yeah,
was
we
in the
just
right
mentioned-
region. Should I get partial credit?
No.
Partial.
ATL.
Partial. Okay, that's it. Only 3 questions this week. So all bye theme related. All right.
Well, final thoughts, Brian?
Let's just get healthy. Let's see some Trent Williams back in 2 weeks. And John, I hope you have a great trip to Jacksonville. And we'll be singing about all the great stuff that you saw.
Well,
and
We'll be
witnessed there.
talking next week before I go with actually the guy who I'll be seeing the game with.
We should bring him in post game too.
See how we do.
I'm thinking positive. All right.
Final thoughts. I keep thinking about that scene in Aliens when the Marines are standing out there and the dropship's coming to pick them up, take them to the spaceship. And then it crashes into the building and the ATV, and somebody sings, "Why don't we build a fire? Singing a couple of songs, huh? Would that work?" Kind of where I'm feeling the team's at right now. I'm not saying game over, but we're almost to that point. So.
Is Kyle Shanahan Ripley in this version?
No, but I'm Newt saying we better get back soon because they mostly come at dark. Mostly. Take us out, John.
I'm just really disappointed. And, at the end of the day, they just need to execute better, not only from a player perspective, but I'm really putting this on the coaches. I think schematically they have not looked very good. They've looked dull and creative, and they've been outcoached the last 2 weeks. And we should have won in Cleveland with Jake missing one, but those are the breaks. But I just feel like they need this break. The coaching needs to improve. And with the coaching improved, putting players in better spots, better execution will come, and you'll have a nice, complimentary football. But the Niners road is hard. Jags, Bucks, Seahawks, Eagles, Seahawks, Cardinals, Ravens, Commanders, Rams. So you are facing at least 4 top teams in leading their respective divisions. So you're going to have to, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to beat those teams. So it's put up or shut up time now for the Niners. So for all of those that you've been tuning in, we thank you again. We'll be back next week to go over what's happened the week before. Oh, there's anything with the trade, and how the Niners are fared with Seattle or other games, and to preview the Jaguars game with our show's friend, my friend, Michael Oicano. Other than that, be pissed off, but stay faithful. Have a good one.
I'm trying.
Thanks for listening to Niners Talk. Stay faithful.